Hello, today is July 4th, 2020, and the time is 8:54 a.m. Just wanted to give a shout out to all the Americans. Happy 4th of July. And this video is inspired by a comment somebody had left. It was a link to a man's wrongful conviction, and I believe it took place in the 70s, 75 if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around there. And apparently he ended up serving 10 years out of a 20-year sentence. During the time he was in prison, he learned about law and ended up having his conviction overturned, and his life went on.
Ever since I got convicted of this crime, I've always had real serious problems about dealing with how it was done. Because I felt like these people, they were, after being in prison for as long as I was, and then finding out the evidence, the things that actually happened in my case, all of it boils down to the fact that the detectives that was in charge of investigating robbery was aware that the fellow I was mistaken for was a informant for them. And they actually allowed me to go to prison to protect him. Yeah, really. When I applied for the position, they couldn't bond me because I had a criminal record for armed robbery, even though I got all these expungement orders and documentation showing that it had been destroyed, it was no longer accessible, and all these kind of things. But those were just things that I was being sent, and the conviction still came up.
So what I'm about to talk about ties in with today and social justice, as well as how this mass COVID social justice movement is going to play out. Over the 7 years when I was fighting for truth and justice, not just for myself, but for everyone, as well as exposing political, police, and judicial corruption in the city, my story, compared to, say, for example, other people who spend 10, 20, 30, 40 years in prison and end up being exonerated afterwards, my type of story happens every day. These smaller cases happen every day, and there's countless of them. And it's these smaller stories, these smaller cases, that set the precedent for the bigger cases we hear about. And the bigger cases we hear about are but a fraction of this type of injustice, of wrongful convictions that happen. Now, why my efforts over the past 7 years is important is because it really shows with independent evidence how the system, we'll use it as a descriptive, fails people, and how people are wrongfully convicted, especially based on a false accusation of any kind. Over the 7 years, I showed in real time how things are playing out. Now, the reason why cases like mine, smaller cases, are not, people really just skim over them at best, because they're not exciting. There's nothing really to provoke any emotions to get anyone's attention, and that's unfortunate. But it's these smaller, countless cases that set the precedent for these bigger cases. And if we're going to stop wrongful convictions, for example, you have to start with the countless of smaller cases that occur every day. And I'm not exaggerating. There's a former detective in Southern Ontario who exposed, he's one of many people who have exposed that over 50% of people convicted of anything are actually innocent. You have to really think about this. And it's these smaller cases, again, that set the precedent for the larger cases. And my case shows in detail, using independent evidence, of how this type of injustice occurs every day. And people have to start taking note of this if they want to make any change, if any change is even possible at this point in this stage of civilization. Now, how does this tie into, for example, social justice movements and this mass COVID one? Well, the same type of precedent that's being used to wrongfully convict people, such as myself. Social justice uses as well. The social justice movements are not based on facts, critical thinking, common sense, or real practical sciences, which have been confused with theoretical sciences. People have just merged them together, and this is why theoretical sciences are accepted. And how do you recognize one of those? Well, theory. People are accepting theories that haven't even been proven, but that's a different topic. So these social justice movements wrongfully accuse someone and people are wrongfully convicted, even if it's just, say, for example, a tribunal where it's not even a criminal matter. And how this is going to play out with this mass COVID nonsense is the very same principles, the very same jurisprudence, the very same precedents that are used to wrongfully convict people of all sorts of things is going to be used to enforce mask wearing, mandatory vaccines, etc. So I really just want to emphasize how the importance of my case and what makes my case unique to others is the fact that I obtained over the years independent evidence, documentation of how this plays out. And everything to solve, or at least attempt to solve, this type of injustice is laid out in my case. But again, my type of case, for the most part, people just skim over it. And I've even had people say, oh yeah, well, you're just like basically saying, oh, you're just one out of many. Of course I am. But I'm the only one that I know of anyway that has all this evidence to support how. So if you want to make a difference, you need to start with all these smaller cases in preventing these injustices to establish a new precedent. So bigger cases, more serious cases, like for example, someone being accused of rape or murder or something like that, they won't be wrongfully convicted. Just something to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.